Django, how to manage development and production settings. I have been developing a basic app. Now at the deployment stage it has become clear I have need for both a local settings and production settings. It would be great to know the following. How best to deal with development and production settings. How to keep apps such as Django debug toolbar only in a development environment. Any other tips and best practices for development and deployment settings.
The Django_settings_module environment variable controls which settings file Django will load. You therefore create separate configuration files for your respective environments. Note that they can of course both import from a separate, shared settings file, and use Django_settings_module to control which one to use. Here's how. As noted in the Django documentation, the value of Django_settings_module should be in Python path syntax, for example masite.settings. Note that the settings module should be on the Python import search path. So, let's assume you created myapp/production_settings.py and myapp/test_settings.py in your source repository. In that case, you'd respectively set Django_settings_module equals myapp.production_settings to use the former and Django_settings_module equals myapp.test_settings to use the latter. From here on out, the problem boils down to setting the Django_settings_module environment variable. Setting Django_settings_module using a script or a shell. You can then use a bootstrap script or a process manager to load the correct settings by setting the environment, or just run it from your shell before starting Django. Export Django_settings_module equals myapp.production_settings. Note that you can run this export at any time from a shell. It does not need to live in your .bash or anything. Setting Django_settings_module using a process manager. If you're not fond of writing a bootstrap script that sets the environment, and there are very good reasons to feel that way, I would recommend using a process manager. Supervisor lets you pass environment variables to manage processes using a program's environment configuration key. Honcho, a pure Python equivalent of Ruby's foreman, lets you define environment variables in an environment.env file. Finally, note that you can take advantage of the Python path variable to store the settings in a completely different location, for example on a production server, storing them in /etc/. This allows for separating configuration from application files. You may or may not want that, it depends on how your app is structured.
By default use production settings, but create a file called settings_dev.py in the same folder as your settings.py file. Add overrides there, such as debug equals true. On the computer that will be used for development, add this to your .bash file. Or turn it on one time by prefixing your command. At the bottom of your settings.py file, add the following. Note that importing should generally be avoided in Python. By default the production servers will not override anything. Done. Compared to the other answers, this one is simpler because it doesn't require updating Python path, or setting Django_settings_module which only allows you to work on one Django project at a time.
This is how I did it in 6 easy steps. Create a folder inside your project directory and name it Settings. Project Structure. Create 4 Python files inside of the settings directory, namely _init_.py, base.py, dev.py and prod.py. Settings files. Open _init_.py and fill it with the following content. init.py. Open base.py and fill it with all the common settings that will be used in both production as well as development, for example, base.py. Open dev.py and include that stuff which is development specific, for example, dev.py. Open prod.py and include that stuff which is production specific, for example, prod.py. Update. As Andresma suggested in comments, update base_dir in your base.py file to reflect your updated path by adding another .parent to the end. For example,
I usually have one settings file per environment, and a shared settings file. Each of my environment files has This allows me to override shared settings if necessary, by adding the modifications below that stanza. I then select which settings files to use by linking it into settings.py.
If you want to see more, please consider subscribing.